Hi, everybody. Welcome to Drag Racing's Golden Era. My name is Randy. I am the editor-in-chief here. We are bringing you another in our series of Legends of the Sport. Tonight, we, as always, have great treats when we bring some of these guys to you, and tonight is no exception. We are doing a joint interview tonight, which is something we haven't done before. We are joined by Terry Capp, who many of you know as the 1980 U.S. Nationals winner, driver of the Wheeler Dealer. He did so much more, and we're going to find out about that. And we are also joined by his primary crew chief, Bernie Fedderly, who all of you know went on to be a co-crew chief with John Force and did a whole lot of other stuff. But we're going to talk about those two and what they did together and how they all got started. So let's start, Terry. I'm glad that you're here with us. It's a great thrill to have you on the program tonight.
Absolutely, Randy. The pleasure is all mine.
And Bernie, you as well. I think you're in Indiana now, aren't you? We welcome you to the program.
Yes, yeah, we lived in Brownsburg, drag race capital of the world, apparently.
Well, let's get started with all this. To try and do two of you at once is going to be interesting here because we've got to try and get both points here and make this all work without everybody talking over each other. So why don't we just start with, I'll just say, Terry, why don't we start with you? How did you and Bernie first get together? I believe it was in school. That goes all the way back to then.
That's correct. Yes, we met in high school, skipping classes and sneaking out and working on hot rods and things. But that goes way back into the mid '60s, early '60s, mid '60s. God, it's even further back than that. I think that's why I had Bernie be included in this deal, because he can straighten out the dates and things and anything that I might screw up. But though that's exactly it. We met in high school, and he had an interest in cars, and so did I, and we just started going from there and saying, okay, now one of these days we're going to have to build something. I think that at that point in time, Bernie already had his '36 Ford Coach, and I was looking for something to drive on the street other than an ordinary domestic car, and we kind of bashed our heads together and snooped around, and we pulled a '32 Ford truck out of some guy's garage, actually his mother's garage, but that's kind of how it started. And, we chased that thing around a bit and raced it predominantly in Alberta, and started right here in Edmonton at I think the number 7 Supply Depot, which is Air Force Base, and then occasionally we take it to Calgary on a tow bar. So that's kind of where it all began.
Well, Bernie, did you know early on that you weren't going to be a driver? You were going to be a wrench turner? I mean, did you know that or not?
Yeah, I wasn't so as intrigued by the driving end of it as Terry was. For an example, he was just a driving fool. Whatever it was had wheels on. He could drive, and I never. My talents weren't exceptional in those areas. I could drive all right, but as far as going down to Soar or something. Yeah, I could drive, but I think we both had our ideas of where we wanted to go, and I enjoyed the mechanical side of it, and he was natural with the driving side of it, so it worked out good for us.
There's something that, for our younger viewers out there that they probably don't understand about the Canadian scene up there. There was a lot of guys that came out of this scene, a lot of guys. The Capital City Hot Rod Association, I mean, who was all in that thing? Whoever wants to answer that. Dale Armstrong was up there. Was Gary Beck was up there. Who else was in that?
Well, CCHRA, as it's referred to, Capital City Hot Rod Association, goes way back to the '50s. And when Bernie and I were in high school and started messing around with cars, we ran into, of course, more guys and said, hey, you ought to come and get into one of these meetings and see what it's all about. And that's kind of where we all connected. Dale Armstrong was from Calgary, and he did intertwine with us, but Graham Light, he was a CCHRA member, and I don't know whether, I think Rob Flynn was too damn young to join at that time, but I think eventually he became a member of CCHRA much later, probably when Bernie and I had retired from CCHRA. But I think Bonin who was in Red Deer. He was a member of CCHRA just to be a member of CCHRA, because that was sort of the governing body. And what that organization did do, they actually put on the drag races that weren't at a particular drag strip, whether it's at that number supply depot or whether it was on Highway 14, because we used to have a cooperation with Alberta government where they'd block off a chunk of highway and Sunday afternoons, and we'd go beat our brains out there. So that's where CCHRA was all involved with setting up the fence, getting the flag man, not the tree, and things of that nature.
Bernie, you have anything to add to that?
No, those were fun times. I mean, we started with absolutely zero knowledge of the sport, other than the fact that we knew it was happening. It was kind of a big deal in California, and so it must have been good. So we thought, well, we'll let's give this deal a shot, you know. So anyway, we hung out around a lot, and with the CCHRA group, there was some all the hardcore racers from around Edmonton were members, and there were a lot of volunteer work went into it. They worked hard at getting the whole deal going, and yeah, it was great.
So I guess one thing that I came across when I was looking at all the information about both of you guys was that you had actually gone, Bernie, you'd actually gone to what, a technical school to earn a degree as far as mechanics went?
Yeah, I went to NEIT and or NATE, and I did the automotive apprenticeship route, and I was in that for I guess 4 years or something, and ended up with certification and all the stuff. They had real good programs, and I was lucky enough to be able to take advantage of those to improve my racing skills. So yeah, it worked out for me.
Well, okay, so the two of you together, what was the first car that you officially raced as a I guess let's call it a team, as a team? What's the first car?
That would have been a 32 Ford truck. You know, we raced that from probably, I'd say, early 60s, for a couple of years till 62, 63 or something like that. And we went through a few cars after that, of course, until the Pioneer Anglia sort of came into fruition. And that, as I referred to, that was our first real professional race car, because the lettering wasn't on it with shoe polish; it was actually paint.
Gold leaf.
Yeah, it was paint. So we ran that Anglia successfully from about 67 to mid 70s, I'd say. And then we kind of retired that, and we got involved with the C dragster for a while, and then we got involved in another car, which was a bad dream. We picked up what was supposed to be an A fuel dragster. I mean, very lightweight. It had a mag body, and it was only a high gear only car. And I wasn't that much bigger at the time, and you had to put that get into that car like putting on a pair of pantyhose. Not that I ever did, but I kind of thought that must be what it felt like. And we chased that up and down the drag strip in Edmonton here, and that damn thing wouldn't go over 175 miles an hour unless something faster would be pulling it, right? So we kind of gave up on that thing, and that's before we sort of got involved with Wes Van Dusen, who had a front motor top fuel car, and they had he had a partner, he had a driver, and they had some issues with it, and somehow Bernie and him started talking about it, and Bernie was giving him tune-up tips and things, and then he finally said, you know what, how about you guys just take this car and do something with it? So we did. 392. Bernie can probably elaborate on that thing. Every time you let the clutch out on it, you had to replace the main bearings, or else actually crack the block. But it was one of those deals. But we ran that for several years as the Nitro Express. And that was Wheeler Dealer. That was before Wheeler Dealer's inception then, I guess. This is why we called it the Nitro Express. Quick, I keep getting these brainwaves here when I'm telling about it. The reason it got called the Nitro Express was Wes Van Dusen was a hunter. He just left us here about a year ago. Been friends ever since and partners with race cars and such. But he was a big time hunter. He wanted something, a name with some significance. So he says, let's call it the Nitro Express. Well, okay. Are we just going to haul nitro, or what does this thing really mean? Well, the Nitro Express was a bullet made by CIL that manufactures, bullets for various guns. And that bullet was exclusively for killing elephants. Wow. There you go. So he thought, well, we're going to take this 92 and it's going to be an elephant killer. Well, it didn't quite work out that way.
But, oh, geez. Well, Bernie, since he brought this up, I'm assuming the transition from running a gas, B gas, C gas, whatever gas motor you guys class you were in, to running a nitro motor is not exactly a easy learning curve, is it?
No, it was, matter of fact, we found it to be real challenging. No, it was a real challenge, and we were, I guess, ill prepared, and the information wasn't generally available. The guys that did know how to do it weren't about to tell someone else, and it was quite a learning curve, actually. And fortunately, we had enough stick to it enough that we were able to hang in there and prevail till we learned enough to where we could race competitively. But that elephant killer deal, that was it. The late model Chryslers were elephant engines. They called them elephants, and so the elephant killer was killed itself more than it killed any elephants. I think they were real safe.
Well, those 392s. Here's one good thing about them. The 392 back then, anyway, you could go to a junkyard and grab another 392 block out of the junkyard for $50. I don't know if that was true yet when you guys were doing this, but I know they were a dime a dozen, and there aren't a whole lot of them left anymore.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. We pulled a few junkyard ones out and raced them before, the next couple of days later, or day later. So it was that was a different time. These current engines there's no OEM parts on them. They're just all aftermarket and wazoo stuff.
So you guys run the Pioneer. I did not realize that you guys ran that thing. You said into the middle 70s before you switched over to fuel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that'd have to be in let me think about this for a minute. No, it wouldn't be mid 70s, because we got our first back motored Woody car in 72, I think, right, Bernie?
72 or 3, 72 maybe.
Yeah. So it would be before that, and it eventually, that car got converted to a wheeler dealer car, and was a full bodied car, nice looking car, and we did put an elephant in it. We're beating up that 92 and cracking the main webs in it and such, and we ended up down in Keith Black's shop, and Charlie Allen, who at that time was racing a funny car, he was in Black's yard. And on his ramp truck, his funny car was, and in the compartment behind the cab, there was a 426 that he said he would gladly sell to us, right? So we negotiated, and we picked up that 426 and put it in the front motored wheeler dealer car. And I think we raced it first time in Saskatoon after we brought the engine to Edmonton and put it in, and I think we dialed it in at the racetrack at Speedway a couple of times, and then we went to Saskatoon, and the thing, I don't recall the ETs, but it was incredibly fast. A mile an hour was right up there in 240, 245s, I believe. And we came back, and the talk was, oh well, that it probably didn't go that fast. I hate to say it, but they said it was a Jap time, right? That's the term they used in those days. But nonetheless, nobody believed that it ran that fast. So the next event that we went to was at Seattle, and it even went a little faster. So that kind of quelched that belief. But after that, obviously we were quite impressed with the Elephant engine, and it went on to another dragster. Did I get some of that right, Bernie?
Oh yeah, I think we're pretty much on course. I was just thinking back on those experiences, but I think Wes was overly optimistic when he talked about the parts that what he had to get started. His 392 stuff was a museum quality quantity anyway. So we weren't going to beat anybody with what we had. So it was a good thing we made that move. But that was pretty cool.
Did it
Yeah.
make your life easier, Bernie, to be able to have
yeah.
that 426?
Oh boy. Yeah, and it had some odd stuff on it at that time. Uh, Dragsters, if they ran a late model engine, if they ran an Elephant, they would run a stock stroke, uh, a stock bore deal, and it was Fordless, so they were 426s, and but if you put that same engine in to race a funny car, you put a stroker in it for 400,000 or 500,000, whatever, uh, and that was a funny car combination, lower compression and whatever. But anyway, we thought, well, hey, whatever we're getting here, it's got to be better than what we had. So we put that in, and there was a couple other deals that went along with that deal. But there was a fuel pump overdrive, which we had no knowledge of. We said, "What's this thing? How does it work?" Oh, hey, look at this, guys! And so we bolted it on. And anyway, this thing was very, very fast. It's at Saskatoon when we ran the thing, and it had two flat tires at the end of the track, and it had spun the centers right out of the tires, and just burned them out, which was unusual at that time. And so anyway, we got fresh tires on it and ran it again, and it ran pretty good. And so we ended up at the coast, looking for better air. And boy, I tell you, we had a lot of good times with that thing.
Well, I thought you were going to forget about that pump overdrive, because everybody that didn't know any better thought that was some device that we were cheating with, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but that engine, like Bernie said, it was a stock stroke, and worked good in the dragster. But at that point in time, I think we had a funny car then. It would have been that Vega, I believe. Didn't we? Yeah, we did. And we'd switch the engine. We had one engine in two cars, so that engine made it into the funny car every once in a while as well. But that's a whole new story that we'll probably get to a little later. When you attend a meet with the funny car and a top fuel car in one motor, it's pretty hectic if you win rounds.
Well, I did read that Wes had a match circuit funny car and top fuel car going to match racing. And did you drive both of those, Terry, or who drove them?
Yes, I drove them both.
So you were doing double duty at match racing?
Yeah, even and again, one engine.
Oh, Bernie, I feel sorry for you.
We were having fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they had to Bernie and the boys had to commandeer a mini bike to make sure I got back on time. They had all the engines ready. The engine ready. It's just a matter of where the hell's Capp. Oh, okay, go get him. He's down there somewhere. Bring that car back. And sometimes they'd leave it there, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, right. That's how come we got this gray hair, man.
Well, yeah. It definitely was a different time back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and Bernie, both of you guys, you guys raced into the 90s, and Bernie, you were going long after that, and the scene from the days when you could have a couple of guys put a top fuel car together and go race successfully to where we ended up now. I mean, what a huge change, and I wish there was a way to go back to those days, but I know that ship sailed.
Yeah. Well, just having said that, there was Bernie, who was absolutely, that was it. We had to have him, and he had to have me, I guess, because we had the car, and we had one crew guy with us at all times, sometimes two. And if it was a local race, there'd be three. Otherwise, like that, the U.S. Nationals, which we frequented a few times before winning it, it was Bernie, myself, one of the guys from the shop that worked for Bernie at Wheeler Dealer, and or else, and a guy that drove the rig if one of us wasn't available. And we all had jobs and things, so it was kind of tough to get away. But if we had four guys on the crew, we were laughing. Otherwise, it was pretty tight with just two or three, and I just did what I was told. The only time I got a chance to relax is when the motor started, right? So that was about it.
So were the other crew guys, were they just tire wiper kind of guys, or were they actually knowledgeable guys?
Well, Bernie'd have to answer that. I think they're pretty knowledgeable, or else he would have turfed them.
Yeah. No, we had some plenty competent mechanics, real devoted to the cause, and so that was fortunate, because it's one of those deals that has to be a labor of love. At that level, there no one's making any money, and you're putting a lot of creating a lot of problems for yourself. Most guys. Well, let's put it this way: most wives were real glad to hear that their husbands were going to race with us. Yeah, so it was, it was tough, but we had good people. We've always been fortunate in that respect. We've had some real good ones, and the guys that weren't quite as skilled mechanically were good entertainers, so they'd keep us laughing.
I've heard so many stories from back in this era, during the middle 70s in the match race scene. And I think you guys actually had more fun after the race was done than you did during the race.
No, that's a fact. Going back to when we'd do Tulsa and then Indy and surrounding areas and such, and we'd be traveling with two or three other race teams, and there was a lot of shenanigans going on the roads, and we're trying to see who had the best tow vehicle, whether it was a GM or a Ford or a Dodge or everything. So there was a lot of competition on the freeways too at that time, but. We managed to meet in areas, and West Van Dusen was very beneficial to keep everybody together. Was a great chef if it meant dark rum and sandwiches. He really came to
Yeah.
came to the seed.
Yeah. Wes took care of the hors d'oeuvres, and we ate good.
Well, like I said, I know that ship has sailed, and the good times that happened back then, that those days aren't coming back. But so why don't you guys tell me about the funny car Top Fuel? Is that all you guys did with this, was just match racing? And where did you match race?
No, well, Bernie will probably have to refresh things, but the Top Fuel car, we especially when we got to the rear motored car, we raced the Northwest. We raced quite a few NHRA points races with that too, and with the funny car, it basically stuck around Alberta, and we went to Seattle, and I think we went to Portland with it, and Northwest type of thing. Yeah, I don't think it ever attended a national event or anything like that. It was just local races, and of course, and match races. The 64, the 32 funny cars, things along those lines, and that was hot products, and in Seattle and Portland and those areas, and of course, I think we even chased it down to Spokane a couple of times and ran the Mustang funny car there. So that's kind of basically where it. I don't, like I said, I don't think the funny cars were at a national event at all, right, Bernie?
No, that's right. As I recall, no, I don't. No, it was pretty much it was a money maker rather than a money spender. I like the dragster. And
Well, a lot of people that we encounter, say, gee, that drag racing career, you guys made a lot of money, didn't you? I said, oh, we made a ton of money, but then we spent a ton and a half, everybody was pretty well a volunteer. And if we could cover the overhead of getting the guys to and from the races and get them, feed them properly, it was a bonus, but we had a lot of help from guys like Gibbs, like Steve Gibbs. We'd attend a national event and he'd say, hey, these guys, you go over and see them and get a decal from them. And, there's an opportunity to pick up some extra money there. And if there's anything around that he thought would benefit us, he would definitely send us or send them over, hooked us up with good gear. And then guys like Henry Walther, he was big man in the industry then, and he knew everybody, and he wanted to make sure that everybody he knew that was in the industry would know us. So we got a lot of support. And then Earl Ritchie with Schaefer, and through Linda and Jack, who was the head guy at Schaefer at the time. So it was we were quite fortunate as far as diverting some of our costs and expenses by having help from some of these manufacturers.
Well, on that point, for both of you, I had talked with Steve Gibbs. What was it, about 2 weeks ago, I guess. He came on and we were talking about we were actually talking about tiny tires. We did a little episode on the little wheels that came out in the in the late 80s there, and Big Daddy and all that. And what he said, I told him, I said, I'm going to be talking to Bernie and Terry here, and he goes, you want to know something? Out of all the drag racers and tuners and everybody that I was around, those two guys were probably a couple of the best guys that I ever got to know in the drag racing scene. So I just wanted to pass that on to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's Steve was a real guy in drag racing. I mean, he was wonderful for the little guys.
Yeah. Oh, no, he'd come around and give us pointers, when we'd have these 32 car extravaganza at Indy, and you could make as many runs as you want. He's a guy that said, listen, you better have your jack stands and your jacks, and if you're not quite pleased with your qualifying point, get back in that damn line and be prepared to work on your car off the tailgate and move ahead, things like this. And if we didn't show up, he'd make damn sure, he'd send somebody over and say, tell those guys to get their asses in the lineup here, so he was really good to us.
Well, speaking of that, my buddy Mike Couch, he was on the starting line there. You know how Mike is. He told me, he goes, at one point we had a huge collection of like 9/16 wrenches and 7/16 wrenches, because we'd find tools laying all over in the staging lanes back there. Guys in a big hurry to get up and get the next round of qualifying in. That was a different time too.
Yeah, that's right. You're hooked up with Mike. Well, Buster and Mike were very nice to us as well. We're pleased to have those guys around. Mike was quite critical. He'd tell you if you screwed up. He'd call you no drive, son of a bitch, if you had
to. He's watching this, so he's gonna hear this.
Yeah. Well, tough love, I guess, is what they called it. Or call it now, I should say.
Well, I went back and well, actually, before we get into that, let's talk about this period leading up to the 1980 U.S. Nationals. This wasn't your first time at the big rodeo here. You guys had been there before. Why don't we talk about that period, the match racing going into trying to get into the U.S. Nationals and actually win that race? Were you match racing and doing all that? And was the U.S. Nationals the only event you were attending, national event?
No, we do the Northwest Nationals in Seattle. I think one year we came in 5th overall in the points. So we were in Indy, and I think we were Atlanta, Baton Rouge. Where else, Bernie? Don't remember.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that pretty well covers it. I don't remember. No, we had selected ones that fit our schedule, and it was all good experience we gained, and it wasn't just show up at the track for the first time and win Indy. It was a little more involved than that. We paid our dues going in, but we were lucky enough to win one of the biggies. That 32 car deal was kind of special, and
We we hell, we did Indy. Well, I know specifically with the first back motored car, obviously in 72 or 73.
yes,
Of course, we were to Winter Nationals pretty much, on a regular basis. But I specifically recall in 72 or 73 when we were there filing the ring gaps or the pistons to put in an extra oil ring because we never had any more pistons. But that was the year that the world famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky got sold from the Indianapolis Racers to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yep.
They came out to the track to introduce him and say, "Hey, these guys are from Edmonton. This is where you're going." And I said to Bernie, looked at Wayne and Gretzky and Peter Pockington and Nelson Scalbania that were the buyers and the sellers, and I said, "God, I've seen hockey sticks thicker than that kid. I don't know how the hell he's ever going to play hockey." And look what happened there. He probably looked at us and he said, "These guys are here to do what?"
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I can't judge a book by its cover, I guess, huh?
I guess not. Well, Bernie, here's one of these things, and for you too, Terry. Doc Holliday, who lives about 5 miles north of me here, funny car driver, drove the Telstar. He, him and Jerry Newman, when they were out running the match race scene, I talked to Jerry several times about this, and he goes, sometimes the racers who were out on the match race scene running these crappy tracks and figuring out how to get 2 or 3 good runs down a lousy track would march into these national events and have such a huge advantage over the guys that weren't on the match race scene because they knew how to get down a track. They knew how to tune a car for that.
Well, that's something that, I can substantiate being really gold because I recall Bernie standing down there watching it and going to the mid track and watching any type of a car, not necessarily a fuel car, and saying, this is where we're going to go. And Bernie, you probably won't agree with me here, but I recall Big Daddy even coming over and talking to Bernie and saying, which way should we go? Should we be over here or over there? What do you think about that lane or the other lane? And that's kind of true to the fact. There's no Lannies running around there with all this high tech equipment. It was take a look at the track and decide where you're going to plant the car. So and of course we ran on tracks going back in the 70s that were air bases and during after the war type of thing, and there's decent asphalt spots there where you could run a quarter mile. And when nobody was there racing, it was a cow pasture, so you can imagine what was all over the track, right? So you had a lot of things. But mind you, we didn't race any fuel cars there. It was our gas cars and things like that. So it's all like Bernie says, it's a learning curve, and all that training that he took at Nate to become a mechanic. I think he's told me this before. It didn't have a lot to do with Top Fuel racing.
Well, I had to justify something, There was actually, the truth of the matter is there was a lot of things that I did learn just about being a mechanic in that program, and it served me well, actually.
These days, it's such a science. Let's say you go to the Mile High Nationals or whatever they're calling it these days. You go to Denver, you've got a combination that you kept from every time you've been there, or you go to Baton Rouge, you've got a combination for that kind of air. But when you're going from one lousy prep track to another, there is no combination. You got to figure it out on the fly.
Right. No, exactly. And, speaking of Denver, we did race there a few times as well. But, Bernie was definitely in support of, hey, we got to get more compression here. And we're thinking, what the hell do you have to do that for? He said, well, take a look at the altitude. Okay, that explains it, type of deal. But for, going to places like Denver and coming from a track well, Edmonton International Speedway wasn't that bad, but Calgary was a different story. No track prep or anything like that. Same thing with Saskatoon. Basically, they had, you'd be lucky if they had VHT, and half the time they never had it. We'd have to, do it ourselves. But there's, and it's no different now. I mean, take a look at what they're doing. I mean, they're analyzing that track left, right, and center. It's all about how much bite's going to be there.
I don't, I never get down on the NHRA and the program, because I mean, I've always understood that we've got where we are today with drag racing because everybody's always chasing quicker, faster, and trying to innovate to get there. And this is just a natural progression. I know a lot of people aren't happy with it, but I'm thrilled to death that the NHRA is looking the way they are today. But track prep, there was something about the excitement of a race where you actually lane choice made a difference, and I don't think that happens in today's races. I mean, even in the '90s, Bernie, when with Force and that, was lane choice even such a big deal then?
Yes.
In the '90s, it still was. Steve Gibbs
Yeah.
hadn't glued the tracks yet quite as much yet, huh?
No. Well, no, they were using glue, but relatively small volumes by comparison. And no, they put a lot more emphasis on track, and we wanted it, and I think it makes for better racing. Really, I mean, the idea of both cars going up there and smoking the tires to hit, well, I guess that appeals to a certain group, and I'm not knocking it, but there's something to be said for a nice side by side race, two cars running down a good prep surface, and producing good ETs. So I don't know. It's just my personal preference, I guess.
Well, I do agree with you on that. I'd rather see a side by side race than I would have, somebody who should have won the race go out because the track sucked. I would much rather see that. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of that happening now. It's always pretty good, and you see these national events where they get lane choice, and it seems like Bernie can attest to this, that you see them pulling the clutch cover off or fooling around with the cover off the computer and all that, and they can make a quick adjustment to make the thing stick to the track. But it's pretty scientific now. Bernie had a lot of involvement with that, and I did not, so it's hard for me to comprehend that, but it's all technology. I mean, I say that the way it is now, if they didn't need somebody to point the car, they'd send it down there by itself, and they'd take a look at the computer and find out what they did wrong. But of course, you need somebody to point that damn car.
Yeah, that's right. No, the that pointing is still a pretty big part of the deal. That's what separates the winners. Well, I shouldn't say winners or losers or whatever, but it separates the ones that have the most success, the ones that are able to keep the track or keep the car in the track on the groove, and be able to take advantage of what the track has to offer. So, believe me, there's lots of challenges left out there for a driver.
Yeah, I know. Well, let's talk about the 1980 U.S. Nationals. It would, if I remember right, wasn't this, Terry? You probably know this. This was the last 32 car top fuel field, I believe, ever at the U.S. Nationals. Correct?
That's correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, you've got Beck, who's number one in the points. You've got Jeb Allen, who's number two in the points, and you've got Shirley, who's number three. You've got that battle going on all year long. And what I find incredible about this race, and I actually went back and looked at the numbers, Bernie's tuning and your driving were unbelievably consistent through this entire race. You guys were running 586, 584, 589. I mean, nobody else, even Jeb Allen was running 560s. Or I'm sorry, he was running 590s, 6.0s, and you guys, what made this race so good for you? You know what's funny, Terry? At the end of the race, when you were being interviewed, you said something like,
Incredible it is, Steve, as we have finally gotten to the last two cars of this U.S. Nationals. It's been a long, long race with the rain delay caused right about halfway through. Final eliminations delaying it one day. We come down now, and a great crowd has turned out, unexpected as they were, to show up, because nobody expected to be racing down this Indianapolis Raceway Park quarter mile. But right now, Jeb Allen against Terry Capp, the final in Top Fuel Eliminator. Both cars very closely matched on the performance standards set earlier in the race, and they leave the line side by side. It appears to be Terry Capp with the lead, and it is Terry Capp, the national champion in Top Fuel Racing. 5.82 seconds his elapsed time. A close race, as it was a 5:89 for Jeb Allen, and you see just a slight lead being built up there in the first few hundred feet for Terry Capp, and it was enough to carry him to the winner's circle.
Tell me about the race. What happened?
Oh, it was just excellent. We everything worked. Everything was clicking our way all weekend. You know, we got here on time. We're usually late. You know, my crew chief Bernie came with us. He usually flies and he takes the wrong airplane. You know, everything was just working good. And we you know what bushing is? We bush to see who got the bed. I got a bed. I usually get a rollaway. I had a bed all week. It's just been great, and the motor is just as clean and dry as a whistle.
This could be the start of a lot more of these, don't you think?
Well, as far as my wife Rochelle and my son Jared are concerned, if they can come, fine. But if not, I don't know. But, you know, we're part-time professionals, and we raced and we got the time. This weekend we had the time, and here we are, man.
Well, congratulations to you. Canada and all the Canadian fans are here, and there are thousands of them.
I know we've got a lot of fans back home, and I only wished half of them that were here could have stayed, because I like doing it for them, too.
I know you do. A happy Canadian. You'll take that U.S. green.
Where's my boy?
North of the border.
but what made the difference for you guys in this race?
Well, it's yeah, Bernie'd have to tell you about that, because he just kept saying we've got a lot of potential for this race. But we always were successful. Well, not that successful, but we always qualified well at Indy. And you know, there are all those 32 car fields were prevalent, of course, then. And we always are in the top half, you know, which you got to be better than 16 nonetheless. Yeah. And just everything. Well, again, I think we had a match race in Saskatoon on the way down there, and we bargained up an aluminum head. Bernie can correct me if I'm wrong, and we ended up bolting on the cast iron heads, and we thought, well, is this going to make things better or worse? And I may be right or may be wrong. I know we set the track record in Saskatoon for just about everything, you know, top speed and low ET, which still stands, but you know, that is because nobody else has raced there since, probably. But we got a few records like that. But I don't know, Bernie. It was you had the right combination, and Bernie liked Indy.
Yeah, it was one of those deals that there was just enough. There was so much hype involved with that race. It was hard not to get caught up in the excitement of it, and just kind of, you know, when you had an opportunity to get out there and bash heads with the boys and girls, I guess, you know, I'd take full advantage of it. So we were real careful with the moves we made, and we used to do a lot of committee stuff too. You know, we'd say, well, what do we think we should do here, and you know, so you know, fortunately, we all kind of were on the same page at that race, I guess, and yeah, there was a lot of well, I guess we made some good calls that day, and you know, but then it's funny how that works, and I'm glad you mentioned it, but how some tracks are good for some people, and we all did well at Indy.
Well, you know, Marvin Graham, I'm just looking at my stat sheet here. Marvin Graham qualified for that race with a 5:68, and I'm not sure how he pulled that off, because the rest of the race he never ran below 5:8. But I mean, the consistency that you guys showed in that race, because if you think about it, you got Beck and Jeb Allen and Shirley, and these guys are all at the top of their game, and you guys come in there and just win that race. And now, granted, Shirley red lighted, but even on that red light, she still only ran a 590, and you guys still ran a 580. So, I mean, congratulations to you guys. And Bernie, I'm assuming it had a lot to do with how you tuned that car. Were you guys still running a pedal clutch at that time, a 2-speed?
No, we actually had a centrifugal clutch in at that point, and that helped the consistency. It was something the dragster guys were reluctant to give up their starting line advantage, which they did. They could leave a little. Probably reaction times were better. We know it didn't monitor that stuff so much then, but I guess they, there were, the centrifugal clutch did have some advantages and disadvantages. One being consistency being important, and that they were definitely better for that, but not everyone had them, and so anyway, yeah, I don't know. It was
one of the reasons we had the glide in that car is because that's what we had to put in the funny car.
That's right.
So when it was in the funny car, that's where it belonged, and it was in the dragster. We just sort of put it there, and Bernie got it to work quite well in the dragster, so we just kind of stuck with it. And that car, that specific car that he won Indy with, the way Bernie had it set up, too bad we couldn't get some stats on the 60 footers on that, because I'll tell you, that'd lay you back in that seat like you wouldn't believe. Mind you, half the time, I don't know what else Bernie was scheming there for, but it'd keep picking up the front wheels on that car, and we never had wheelie bars on it. And he said, you don't need them. So I guess that was fine. But, more often than enough, the thing was, 8 inches, a foot and a half. And when it was ready to settle down, it just settled down and go like a bat out of where. And the car, handled quite well and had great power. It tended to move a little bit just before I'd shift it, and that was a good indication to say, come on, it's time to shift it. So, it all worked.